Dzień dobry, witamy Państwa na kolejny webinar CECF. Dzisiaj mamy fajny eksperyment i będziemy robić webinar po angielsku, bo mamy naprawdę wyjątkowy gość i temat, który ja myślę, że my tutaj w Polsce możemy dużo nauczyć. Nasz gość dzisiaj będzie pan Marios Pantelli. Marios jest z pochodzenia cypryjski, ale mieszka w Londynie bardzo długo, jest pacjent medyczny konopi i on jest założycielem MedCannID. To jest taki program kartów dla karty pacjentów, który naprawdę działa i mają umowę z policją i naprawdę tutaj pacjenci to używają, korzystają, też to bardzo pomaga z relacjami z lekarzami i dzisiaj ja chciałem o tym porozmawiać i to jest nasz pierwszy webinar po angielsku, ale mam nadzieję, że ludzie będą mogli to zrozumieć i w przyszłości też będziemy mieć napisy po polsku, ale w tej chwili bym chciał tutaj przedstawić pan Marios Pantelli. So Marios, welcome to CECF TV.
Hello.
So Marios, firstly, thank you very much. If I can maybe ask that we try and speak really slowly. So I'm English, I've been living in Poland 15 years, and I often forget that when I start speaking English, it's actually a bit of a curse for the English, where they don't realize how hard it is to understand in a way that a Pole speaking to a German would speak in the kind of vocabulary which is nice and easy. But once again, thank you and welcome to CECF.
Very much.
If I maybe could ask a first question, just if you can maybe just tell us a bit about your history and about the vision of MedCannID. Why was this project formed, and why was it so important to you?
Okay, so I have been a medical cannabis advocate for over 20 years now, and I've been running campaigns internationally over in Greece, Cyprus, in the UK, and since the change in the law in 2018, we have started a new program in order to engage with the legal prescription system in the UK. This was initially launched as something called Access for Patients, and we actually had the first medical cannabis prescription sent out to an adult patient in the UK through that system. That incorporated a medical ID card and a mobile app that was incorporating the two, and then allowed the process for the patient to move forward through the app. Then about 3 months ago, we finalized the new incarnation of the Access for Patients system called MedCannID, and we launched the pilot scheme in the UK. It is unfortunate that since the new legislation coming in, there haven't been any consideration about patients' security and safety from arrest, and essentially a number of other points that have been not really touched upon. So we formed MedCannID in order to ensure that the patient can quickly and efficiently verify their legal status as a medical cannabis patient to any authorities and anyone else who might be requesting that kind of information. Yeah, we are now at the end of the pilot scheme. So moving forward to phase 2 of the program in the UK.
And how does it, if you could maybe tell our audience here in Poland, what is the current status of medical cannabis in the UK? You said it's been legalized or decriminalized in 2018. How is the current reality for patients at the moment?
When we're talking about the medical
program.
So essentially, patients visit clinics and there's a number of clinic setups right now operating in the UK, specialist clinics. They can either refer themselves to the clinics or get referred by their GP or specialist to visit and get the prescription. If they qualify, then they essentially can be prescribed a number of medical cannabis products, which can be either flower or oils, etc. And that's
So you
it.
have flowers and oils in the UK at the moment?
Yes, both are being prescribed.
Fantastic. So in some ways, the UK is further ahead than Poland, where in Poland you just have 6 flowers available. Okay, final question in terms of background. How many patients are there in the UK at the moment? How big is the current ecosystem, and how is it growing?
I think it's literally moving forward at a fast pace at the moment, because the coronavirus restrictions have pushed the system towards an online presence, and the logistics have also moved online. Therefore, you have video consultations and making the whole process quite a lot faster and more accessible to the patients. And currently, I'm not entirely sure what the total number of prescriptions, patients are out there, but definitely in the thousands of people are now currently being prescribed in the UK medical cannabis products. So it's a considerable amount of people that essentially the reason MedCannID exists for these patients is because it is impossible otherwise to be able to recognize the legal patients and somebody who is got an illicit illegal supply. So therefore, we perform that service where we can quickly verify the legal patient by means of the MedCannID.
And when you say verify the legal patients, is this something which you do in conjunction with the police? How would this work? Is it the kind of the legal patient versus the black market patient, which is the key consideration here, or is there a different consideration which you had in mind when you formed MedCannID?
No, this is strictly for prescribed patients who have gone through the legal system, and they can use the ID in order to verify that they belong to that the status is a legal medical cannabis patient rather than anything else. Therefore, the existence of the card can quickly act as a verification method for the authorities to be able to identify a legal medical cannabis patient. And essentially, we've got more because we've got an accompanying app. So there is more proof and verification to be done through the app in terms of, the types of medication allowed, the types of medication being prescribed, and so on.
And is it also helpful for doctor-patient relations? Is the card in some way useful for patients to go to new doctors or to go to a pharmacist? Is there a way that a patient can view or show its kind of medical data so that a doctor can make better, more informed decisions looking at the background of a patient? Or is this not something which is the case at this stage?
No, at this stage it's simply a verification system, a validation system for the patient to use in order to be able to show that they are actually fully within the legal structure that exists, and allows for them to be able to medicate without fear of arrest. So what you're describing is not really part of the program.
Okay, understood. So in terms of
let me just elaborate a little bit more on
Yeah,
this.
sorry,
But
Marius.
I am not sure if potentially, the card proves that you're a legal cannabis patient. However, the history of your, your archive as a patient is considered by the doctor and the pharmacist. We're not healthcare professionals as such in order to provide this service. But what can, and we don't know where this is going to lead in a couple of years down the line. The card is valid whether you go to one pharmacy or another pharmacy, or one doctor to another. So maybe there's something there that could evolve from that, similar to the dispensing system in other countries where you can have the ID for that purpose. But at the moment, it simply acts as a verification for authorities to prove that you are entitled to essentially hold your medication, consume your medication, and you're a valid legal medical cannabis patient.
So why was the MedCannID project so important to you, Marius? Why did you decide to form this company? Why did you think there was such a strong need for such a identification system?
Essentially, because since 2018 and prior to that as well, I have been speaking to patients from all over the world through seminars and expos and all the other things that have put the patients forward and were expressing their personal the personal experiences. There was things that were quite obviously omitted from the change in the legislation. So when medical cannabis on prescription was made legal in the UK, a lot of things weren't taken into consideration. For example, no information about how to approach this, maybe to law enforcement, then transport police, customs, what the DVLA, which is the agency for driving and driving licenses and stuff. So we have a number of uninformed parts of the equation that kept the patient at risk. The most important is from a risk of arrest, and no medical cannabis patient should be living in fear of arrest. Maybe that was historically what the cannabis community has suffered, and still the cannabis community in general suffers from this general fear of arrest. However, the legal medical cannabis patients shouldn't really be exposed to that. Therefore, it was very obvious that more services can be offered to the patient group in order to overcome these abnormalities in the system. So we've taken this step forward to start communication with law enforcement, start communication with customs and transport police. And we are allowing now the system to work organically, and we are seeing patients taking the initiative forward and engaging in conversations using the MedCannID with, for example, at work. There is no provision for medical cannabis patients to be able to be accepted in the legal working environment without any discrimination against their condition and their medical prescription, which can be easily, it's very easy due to the stigma associated with cannabis as such, to see this problem arising at work when one of the patients might need to keep up with his medical cannabis regime. So then we also have questions that have started, conversations that have started not at work, but in the community, in the shared accommodation, with family and friends that maybe were in the past unable to engage with the subject due to the illegality of the consumption of cannabis, whether for personal or for medicinal reasons. Here we see MedCannID performing that role as well, where it becomes, a vehicle for beginning the conversations, engaging with the conversations with all these different stakeholders in a patient's essentially life. Your landlord, for example, could easily illegally evict a patient. However, with the presentation of the MedCannID and the proof that he is a legal patient, then the situation might be the fear of that eviction might be eliminated. Same with family, friends, like I said, for stigmatization purposes. Recently, we've had some good responses and testimonials from patients where we're putting up on the website. So some patients have actually engaged with public houses, like to inform them that they're going to be consuming a medication, and presented the card to them. That's
Great. So we're getting some questions from the audience. Nie wstydźcie się, też możecie po polsku zadawać pytania to tutaj. But there's a question from Katarzyna Medras. Is MedCannID a private company or some kind of public body? Maris, is that one that you can take on?
MedCannID is essentially a social enterprise. So this is a new type of formation of a company where we have a social purpose to achieve, firstly, and then the company can operate behind that as a normal company. We're not a charity. We're in the UK. The Companies House allows for a private company to register, but then we operate under a social enterprise initiative. Back in 2006, I was awarded a Social Entrepreneur of the Year award, and I've taken the education provided to me at that point as the grant that I received to put towards forming the basics of NuMeds, which is the company that runs MedCannID. So we have a strong ethical and social purpose driving force behind the company. But like every other company, we have expenses, we have employees, and the rest. So we do generate income to pay for the costs of the company. However, our driving force is not the bottom line, but the social purpose that we perform.
So how do you generate revenue? I take it the card is free to patients, or what is the business model?
At the moment, the reality is that the business model is not fully formulated. However, we've got some great relationships being formed at the moment with companies that not only fulfill our social enterprise initiative goals, and one of them is Alta Flora, where we are able to, for example, use data that is gathered through the app to inform not only the medical profession, but research programs, authorities, and any other interested stakeholders about the current situation in the UK with prescription medical cannabis. So let's see how it unfolds, but there is potential different routes to follow. Like I said, the business model is not 100% fixed at the moment. The patients get a free service, and we are hoping to keep that for the future as well. It would be not for the patient to pay a fee towards the card itself, and if the information that the patients share with the system is able to be a patient-led initiative, which we are making sure it is, then any aggregated data that comes out of this equation can be maintaining the patient focus, the patient initiative and the focus within it. So we want to make sure that if, for example, you can see the driving force of a large group of patients in terms of, responding and giving information in response to efficacy, duration, types of products that work for them and the conditions as such, so we can maybe inform other stakeholders in the equation in order to provide the most patient-centric approach, to have the most patient-centric approach to medical cannabis in the UK rather than a commercial one.
Fantastic. So maybe if I can ask, how has the project developed? How are patient numbers? How are signups? And how do you promote this amongst patients? Is it organic, kind of word of mouth development? And what does a patient have to do in order to register? What is the kind of registration process, and is there any due diligence that you do to check out the patients? How can you talk us through the process of the realities of signups, and what have been the challenges in terms of developing MedCannID?
Okay, well, let's take that one by one. So
one by one, a few questions there, Tom Pack.
A few questions, yeah. The system is currently at the end now. We've paused we run the pilot scheme in the UK. We've signed over 130 or so patients initially, and we issued the cards, and we've taken feedback back from the patients, and we are currently uploading the second version of the app, which will ensure the patient feedback has been implemented, and then it allows for future scale up of the system to allow with direct communications with healthcare professionals and the rest of which we can touch on a little bit later. However, for the second part of the question is the card is now signing up patients, however, not running officially through the process. And the process that will start with the launch of the second version will follow very similar path to the first pilot scheme, where we sign up patients with their legal identification documents, and we gather the information to verify the patient is the patient, and then allowing the patient to upload their prescriptions as they are being dispensed to them to the system. And at that point, we perform manual checks, both for the documents uploaded, also for the prescriptions uploaded, and we allow them to be part of the app presentation on the other side. So a little bit more about the system itself. We've created mobile apps that allow the patient to sign up and create their profile on a mobile device, and then allows the patient also to be able to link their plastic card that they receive with this profile using the unique identification system and the app to link the two. Within the app itself, there's a number of aspects of the patient's profile that you can access, and most importantly is your archive of the prescriptions, or at least the latest prescription that would be most important to use. So therefore, we are ensuring that the patient is able to quickly and efficiently present a verified identification tool, which is the card, paper, which is the card, and then also verify within the app itself the type of prescription he is entitled for that particular month.
Great. Well, Marios, I was thinking maybe we can bring in Tim to the conversation. So Tim Henley, who has been patiently waiting backstage. Tim is a MedCannID card user. Tim and I met yesterday at a conference, and he saw this was going and very kindly agreed to come on the show and also give a few of his experiences of cards. So maybe Tim, if I can ask you as a medical cannabis patient, what benefits have you seen from the card, and why do you think it's a good idea for the UK market?
Well, thank you, Andrew. And let me just say, first of all, I hope I get this right, Vijay. If I didn't, I was doing my best Eurovision kind of thing, but let's see how we go. So let me first show you my MedID card. Now, what is the advantage of that? So here on my tablet, I have a photograph of my prescription. So when I had my prescription, part of the process, it may be the same in Poland, is you give it to a pharmacist and a pharmacist dispenses it. You have no proof after that process other than either the prescription or the medication. But the medication comes in a tub like this, and I could fill it with anything. So I need a prescription, really. So what the advantage of the MedCannID card is, and I believe I may have been one of the first to get it, Marios. I'm not sure, but I think I was very close because it came out pretty much at the same time I was getting my prescription. And so it was a real advantage for me to have something that I can put in my wallet and I could take with me. And the way it is in the UK is that you can only vaporize cannabis to be medical. If you combust it, if you smoke it in a joint or something like that, it is no longer medical. So when you carry a vaporizer with you, somebody will challenge you and you can say, I'm a medical cannabis patient. And I assume it is the same still in Poland, that there are people that will challenge you and ask, you're using cannabis, this is illegal. And it is very useful to have something like that to say, hold on, I'm a medical cannabis patient. I have a reason for using cannabis. The process in the UK is that you have to have tried pharmaceutical drugs before you can get a prescription for cannabis. I believe it is different in Poland, and there is a difference that you have to go through. But here, you have to have tried traditional drugs first. And if those don't work for you, then you can get a cannabis prescription. And as Mario said, you have to go to, at the moment, we have a national health system that does not allow for cannabis. So you have to pay for it privately to get your cannabis. And again, one of the advantages of the MedCannID card is hopefully as it develops and becomes more established and more people are aware of what is going on and start to trust it, then we will move to a kind of dispensary-based system that Mario spoke about earlier on, which for me is one of the real possibilities of medical cannabis. Because this currently, and I believe we spoke yesterday, this is spectrum number 2. I find it very good, but I'm very interested in different strains. When I speak to my doctor, I say, this one has worked well, but sometimes you develop strain tolerance. You don't get the benefit as you use the same strain again and again. So it would be good to go to a dispensary, a pharmacy, and be able to look at the different strains and say which one is similar to that and which one will help me. So I believe the long-term advantage of the MedCannID card is that we will be able to move to this dispensary system in not too long, I hope.
Fantastic. And yes, Marios, please.
It's a quick way, like Tim is putting it. I mean, that's not 100% our official thing at the moment. But, you know, obviously the card identifies the group straight away, the patient group. And you know, if this be a dispensary that dispenses the medication, a pharmacy that follows, you know, the pre-prescription on repeat, and all the rest of it, is very easy to then use MedCannID for that purpose of identifying the patient. And to be honest, that is our main goal, to be able to quickly identify and verify the patient so that they can make sure that they're not living in that state of fear of arrest and whatever else that you know, people that have put stigma on the patients from the previous history will be looking at explaining. So I think when we come to Tim's case, you know, it's easy to see that if it's a patient-led initiative, this could be something that is then put through the system, and the feedback creates that model that works better for the patient. So, you know, what Tim is describing there could be very well be what the patients decide is best for them.
Great. So, Tim, would you say there is an element of security that you felt? Is it something that, have you ever felt insecure as a patient, either holding cannabis in your home or having it in your car or something like this? Because this is something we have heard a fair bit in Poland, where you have, let's say, very much non-recreational patients who very much feel the stigma of cannabis being seen as a narcotic. They, in some ways, can't get the narcotic aspect out of their own head, and having something like this allows patients to have essentially this medicine in the house without the fear of recrimination. Is that something that you felt, or is the UK that maybe less of a stigma in Poland? Do you see the benefits of what Marios is saying?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I should imagine it's very similar. It's very similar across most of the world, to be honest. Cannabis is really only just starting to become a mainstream medicine in the majority of the world. And so there is this transition period whereby we are moving from the illicit black market to a regulated medical cannabis market, and you need to prove that you've been through the process. So having the card allows you to actually demonstrate that you've been through this process, and it does give you a feeling of security. The prescription, actually, the piece of paper actually gives you that feeling, but you have to hand it over to the pharmacist, and then you have no proof once that is gone. And part of the card system is that prescription is uploaded into the cloud, so it can be referred back to if anyone challenges you about things. So you have some evidence that it's been officially sanctioned. Yes.
And sorry, if I may add on the back of that comment, Tim, that, you know, the prescription being available to you within the app, you're able to, it works both ways, not just for the patient's safety, but also gives law enforcement a kind of clarity about a person's, first of all, status as a patient, but also you can clearly see what they have been prescribed, which can then give you a more accurate description of what they might be entitled to have in their possession. This would be unachievable otherwise. So this performs this role as well, where it also confirms that the medication is the medication you have been prescribed for this particular month, because the way the app itself works, it gives a grace period for the pharmacy to dispense the medication, but essentially it will invalidate the user account until a new prescription is uploaded. So even if the card might be given to a patient initially, and then later on the patient stops the medication, not only we will immediately know when the prescription is not being updated, but also the app will present the same status, which would be invalid for that month. So it eliminates the possibility of somebody abusing our system in order to reload with something else rather than what they're being prescribed, because the prescriptions here in the UK are valid for roughly 30 days, even though we're starting to see some 60-day prescriptions come in due to the COVID restrictions here. But you can see how the system has gone through the process of the pilot, and I believe we've made it as waterproof as possible in order to address all these issues. Law enforcement have to appreciate that, because people are asking questions, and I'm sure it's coming up as well in the next bit of the webinar. But law enforcement, this is not just a service for the patients. Law enforcement are able to use our system to, first of all, eliminate the possibility of wrongfully arresting somebody, then illegally confiscating the medication. The liability is, too much for the police to bear, when some systems right now I'm suffering, like the police, law enforcement, suffering from cuts and all the rest of it. So the budget is tight as it is. And we offer a service also for law enforcement to be able to quickly not only identify, like Tim said, ensure that the patient has gone through the legitimate process, and then beyond that, verify that what they have as a medication on their person or at home is actually linked to a valid prescription for that month.
Fantastic. So maybe let's now take things to the realities in Poland, and I would like to invite our third guest, the one and only Stelios Alewras. Stelios is a very well-known lawyer in Poland who has made his name in all things cannabis. Stelios, welcome. Stelios, unmute.
Hello to everybody, and sorry at the beginning for my English, which it isn't very well, but I hope that I can explain what I have to say to all.
So, Stelios, we've just been talking obviously about the case study of the UK, but this is obviously a Polish program and Polish realities. So when you hear Mariusz talk about the realities of patients in Poland, in the UK, and of how it helps them with law enforcement, how do you see it from a Polish perspective? Do you see that such cards will be effective for you in situations where you're defending patients in criminal cases?
Well, it depends. It depends of circumstances, because we can have, for example, an information from a neighbor who is saying, in my opinion, in that house someone is smoking, and police come to verify if there is some weed. And if police haven't any information about drug dealing, or it's only a simple verification showing the prescription, medical prescription, and the original box of cannabis, should be enough for the police to stop the verifying of patient. But in some cases where the circumstances are more strange, for example, or police has some information about drug dealing, or they, for example, I have now such a criminal case that one patient forgot his his bag at the railway station, and he came back after 1 hour when the bag with the medical cannabis was stopped by police, and police decided to verify if the percentage of THC and CBD in the weed found inside the medical box was the same as in the prescription. So they have sometimes such kind of ideas. Obviously, it doesn't have a lot of sense because police is executing the law, which in theory, the goal of this law is to prevent the addiction of drugs. Okay, so when you verify a patient if his weed is legal both at the pharmacy or at the dark market, you doesn't prevent the addiction because you have a patient at the end, okay, who needs this this substance, but they verify it. Obviously, there is a problem where the THC is higher because when THC is lower, for example, than 19%, which is in some of the medical cannabis, you can explain it saying that you have made a mix with, I don't know, CBD, for example. So
Stelios,
you can be aware of being charged if for example, the THC is 6 or 10% and should be 20%. Okay, so you can be charged and accused at the tribunal, at the court. There is some private initiative in Poland. They call it passport of medical cannabis. It's nice, but it will depend from the circumstances if the police will believe to this passport and that they have in front the patient, or if they have in front someone who is patient but not only patient. For example, this person can make some selling of drugs, okay, some selling of weed. So it depends. There isn't any document which okay, there is a prescription which allow you to possess the drug. Okay, once you have the prescription, it's you are treating like the person who is allowed by law by the doctor to possess 5, 10 or more grams of weed, which was bought. Okay, so the normal practice in Poland is that you make a copy or the photo of the prescription. You have this photo on the phone. You keep the weed in the original medical box, or how it's called.
Packaging.
Box is good. Packaging, yeah.
Packaging. Normally, most of patients shouldn't be nervous about possessing their legal drug, okay, their legal cannabis. But sometimes there are some verifications. Okay, so it's still a new field for Polish police. So the circumstances are fundamental here. Okay, if police has some information about this person, or it's a totally random person indicated by someone, but okay, it depends also how this person speaks with the policeman. If this person is quite calm and explain everything, or starts to hide something, or is nervous, for example. Okay, so
Stelios,
the decision is taking every time at the moment, okay, at the moment of stopping the person.
So thank you. So maybe Marios, if you can respond to some of the things that Stelios just said, and there's a lot to unpack there about the realities in Poland and the dysfunctions in the system here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thanks, Stelios, for explaining the situation on the ground as such. And it's unfortunate that still patients have to go through these processes when there is a legal system that supports medical cannabis prescription. And this is absolutely, it's unfair, and this shouldn't be the case. It's really interesting to see what the reality is in another country. However, there are a lot of similarities to maybe how not the UK is, but how it was even just a year and a half or 2 years ago, where the system wasn't fully explained or hadn't got the publicity it required. I personally believe they did not anticipate the medical cannabis evolution as it happened in the sector here in the UK, and they voted for something that essentially led to a snowball effect. And now we're in the situation where the accessibility, and not just for the patient clinic situation, but also price-wise, and licensed producers coming in and bringing the prices down for more effective and more variety of product. I think this is where the UK was, and this is where we are now. What you're describing there is quite important to understand also, that, and I'm sure you do from a legal practitioner point of view, that once you, as a person that is being questioned by law enforcement, transport, police, customs, are able to quickly put proof to them of who you are and what you have on your possession, then the liability, or potentially the way the law enforcement interprets that, leads to the second half of the equation, because they will actively be making a move which is illegal. So arresting a patient is not what you would do if you knew that this person is a legal patient. Then possession of the medication, which if you do that to somebody who's suffering from diabetes and you steal their insulin, I'm sure the liability to the officer and his superiors for not having the training required to identify the legal patient. So it is almost like you are giving a power, not just for the patient, but to law enforcement, a service that they're able to then progress to a more informed decision about what they're going to do with this person. Like you said, of course, if somebody's in the corner of a street dealing out small bags and they have a prescription in their pocket and there is some information about this person who has magically abused the system, went through the doctor, and then now he's sitting dealing, I see that, quite a rare occasion. But even if that's the case, then our system will be able to quickly prove that that person is not holding what they're supposed to be. And more importantly, the prescriptions right here in the UK on your MedCannID profile states the percentage of CBD and THC and the amount that you're prescribed for the month. So if you have, let's say, half a kilo on you, but you've been prescribed 15 grams, it's very clear. If you have the wrong amount and the arresting officer decides that this is all lies and I'm going to take it for test, and it proves to be different than the one you've been prescribed, again, it's your responsibility and you will be proven wrong. And thirdly, like Tim said, here in the UK, there is instructions on how to consume it and what to do. For example, the prescription would say by vaporization only. So if you break the instructions of the prescription, you're still acting illegally. And it would also say potentially do not drive a motor vehicle if you've been taking this first 3 hours or whatever. Most of medication says that on the packages anyway, about what, the indications that you should be aware of. So I hope this is, something that MedCannID hopes to perform this role to make that moment easier for both the patient and the law enforcement officer to eliminate the potential of liability either way.
Great stuff. So I have questions to each of you, and these are from the audience. Firstly, Stelios, is Poland ready for medical cannabis patients cards? This is referring specifically to driving law and parenting. Can you, say, lose a child or a license if you're a patient these days? And would patient cards like this help? And then a question to Tim and Marios, a comment from Ilya Reznik. Cześć, Ilya. In my opinion, all special ID cards just stigmatize people, patients, and do not provide any legal defense. So it'd be great to get a response from you guys on this. But maybe Stelios first. Where is, people say Poland is ahead of the UK. And I was talking with Tim, some ways we're ahead, but in many ways we're behind. Do you think Poland is ready for a system like MedCannID to help patients?
Well, from my perspective, I am around all people who are medical users. So from my perspective, Poland is ready. Maybe not every person in Poland is ready, but Poland as a state, as a free hemp organization, we have made also we have committed some, jak się mówi, sondaż?
Surveys.
Analysis of, we paid it to the big important firm, and in Poland, over 65% of people are against the penalization of using of cannabis. So not only for medical cannabis is ready Poland, but also for recreational using, I think.
Well, just to be clear, Stelios, so people are support decriminalization of cannabis. 65% support decriminalization. Yeah.
The penal is that there's any penal consequences. How about using of drugs before the cannabis was became in the low terms medicine, was treated only as a drug, and obviously using of drugs could make some problems with parenting, and also made a lot of problems with driving. But I didn't heard about any case that were some problems with parenting for medical using of cannabis. I think that it will be kind of discrimination, because any other patient of any other psychoactive substances aren't doesn't have problems with parenting, so to grow up their own child. So I don't understand why being a medical cannabis user could make some problems. About the driving, it's a tough big tough topic. Yes. In generally, when they found in your blood some THC, they make you a charge, because every court expert says that stężenie to będzie percentage over 2.5 nanograms per milliliter. They explain it that you are pod wpływem
under the influence.
On the influence, yes. It's driving under influence of cannabis. But I translated from English to Polish. someone who works for me, not me, a very interesting report from the United States made by Richard Campton. Is a report from to the Ministry of committed by Ministry of Infrastructure to the US Senate, and it says that the percentage in blood isn't linked to being under influence. Okay, there is no, it doesn't work like with alcohol. More you have in the blood, more you are drunk. Here at the high level percentage, you can don't observe any influence. Also, and the low levels of percentage, you can find some influence, and it's very individual case. So I'm trying now to make, because I have a new client who was smoking weed during driving, and we are thinking to make an experiment. He became a patient because he has some age to some okay, for some purpose, and we are thinking to ask at the court the experiment. Once he is a in legal possess, because he is a patient, we can legal possess the substance, and we can verify if his reflex and other important for driving issues are the same once he is smoking, and once he in his blood is zero, the THC. He uses from 15 years cannabis, and he said to me that there's no difference between his driving style when he smokes and he doesn't smoke. So we will see if if we will convince the court to make this kind of experiment. So I'm aware about the new badania experiments. Yes, like this important report from the United States from 2017, the Richard Campton. It's 40 pages of important.
Really interesting.
Yes.
Great. So maybe Marios, Tim, if I could ask you to either comment on what Stelios said, or as I said, comment on the realities in the UK, either on the driving and stigmatization, or as I say, anything responding to anything which Stelios said. Maybe Marios first.
Tim, is that okay? I'm just gonna quickly say that we touched on this subject earlier in the week with some of our announcements. Similarly, in the UK law, cannabis, whether it's medical or not, if it's found on your system, a roadside test will indicate quickly that you have consumed cannabis. However, and I clearly said that in the social post, the key word here is impairment, whether you're impaired or not. So in the past, there used to be all sorts of roadside tests that the officers would do in order to assess whether the driver is able to drive, and he could potentially assess the situation as dangerous or not. Now the new thing is the blower, where you can see the level of alcohol in the body. However, in the UK, as the law stands, as a patient, you are prescribed, and the law says that anything found in your system, if it's part of a prescription, a legal prescription, then if it's taken as directed by the doctor, then you have a legal defense in court, even if you're driving. For example, opiates or other drugs that, if you test on the road, they will indicate potentially other illegal substances on those little scales. They're very inaccurate anyway. Those roadside tests, the company that made them had a very inaccurate product. However, it's been widely adopted by police forces in Europe. Regardless, the key thing is whether that patient can or cannot drive. And if your prescription says do not drive after taking this medication, then if you do, then you're breaking the law. So there is a small defense for the patient if he is not impaired and he has taken his prescription according to the directions by the doctor. So I'm not sure if this reflects the same in Poland or it could be used for the same purposes. But if you're not impaired and your doctor hasn't said you can't drive, you are literally, you have a kind of defense that should, allow you to do so. On that subject, because I just had that little research that I did, and I made the post because a lot of people were asking the same question. And as we can see from what you described, Stelios, the report, really the legalization, whether recreational, medicinal, or whatever, does not link with the amount of road accidents or whatever is clearly proven, and each body mass index and all the other facts that affect your THC and CBD consumption can lead to different types. It's not as clear as alcohol, where the more the alcohol, the more the drunkenness, the impairment as such. On the stigmatization, if I may carry on about
absolutely,
the
please.
Keying it up to this thing, I believe that MedCannID not only performs the opposite of, this is a destigmatization of at least the legal medical cannabis patients, because whether recreational cannabis, spiritual use, hemp or whatever, whether you like cannabis or not, medical patients should not live in fear of arrest. There is already the medical conditions that they're having to deal with. The quality of life is affected in that sense by the condition. And the last thing you need is for a fully legally prescribed medication to cause issues that, cause to somebody who might recreationally take cannabis, not for, we're talking multiple sclerosis, we're talking fibromyalgia, we're talking serious conditions. This is not
seriously sick people. Absolutely
not a joke. And I'm really disappointed that people are still having this conversation about recreational and medicinal. When you actually speak to patient groups, and within MedCannID, Tim can confirm that, we'll literally pick up the phone and speak to every sign-up member to not only assess that they are going through the process, but also to be able to see whether there's anything we can identify as a group now. Not only we destigmatize the group, but we also have power as a group, not just from the data and the reports that we're able to create, but also by responding to the users, the members' feedback. For example, the most important and the one that we are now trying to push forward is engagement with HR and insurance policies. Like, where does insurance stand for medical cannabis ID? Am I covered? Am I not? You see what I mean? No one's asked this question. And now Stelios is thinking, oh my God, there's a whole nightmare there that could potentially start from litigation, from being a legal patient. And the other thing is that as the group grows, the needs of the group need to be met. And if there isn't a centralized and a unit that can push the needs of the group further, unfortunately, it might fall under the commercialization strategies of bigger and monopolies and such, and that would be the last thing we need. Therefore, I believe that MedCannID can also inform stakeholders within the medical cannabis sector of the needs of the patient. I can quickly pass it to Tim to maybe confirm some of those points there, because Tim is also working on a secondary project, and this is where the future of MedCannID is to integrate with legal pharmacies in order to make it an easier process for the patient, but also to be able to use the system without any issues with abuse from outside. So direct communication with the clinics and the pharmacies with MedCannID to ensure that the whole system is protected from abuse.
Tim, over to you.
It's really interesting. Sorry, Andrew. It's so interesting to see that the same questions are in Poland as they are in the UK. We see that, and Marios is completely right. It is about impairment. We have pretty much the same limit It's 2 nanograms per milliliter is a limit for THC in the blood. There is a medical defense, and obviously this helps with your medical defense moving forward if you are impaired. But it is your responsibility to kind of evaluate whether you're impaired before you drive. And if you drive impaired, that is absolutely your responsibility. There are apps.
There's no ID card that will help you with this. If you're impaired, you're impaired. And
absolutely.
That's the point. A few people are saying this.
This is really interesting because this is a global industry. I work in the cannabis industry in my day job. I have many different functions, and I talk to people from all over the world. The most advanced here are obviously the Canadians because they have a fully legalized market. They've had medical access for over 2 decades. They are way in advance. Now, they have impairment tests that operate off mobile phones to give you an evaluation of where you are. So a lot of these things are already being answered in different parts of the world. I'm proud, absolutely proud to be a medical cannabis patient because I see the future of our world being the cannabis economy moving forward. And I could go on about all kinds of things about the way that hemp sequesters more carbon than trees, and we get more value from it, how it regains balance back into the soil. There are so many things that cannabis can do. We're just talking about medical cannabis at the moment. But cannabis, we need to change the word from being a bad villain word to being a word that is positive and heroic, because it will change the way that we do things in the future. I don't know whether David Attenborough is somebody in Poland, but if he is telling us that we need to change the way we do things. Otherwise, our children's future are going to be very different from what we've experienced. And part of that change will be the acceptance that we cannot keep on sanitizing, cleaning everything up. We need to learn from the past, where Queen Victoria, she used to use cannabis as a medicine for period pain. We need to go back. We need to learn these things. The problem is, and I don't know whether it's the same in Poland, but we have politicians in the UK that want to make this change, but regulators, the people, the civil servants who make the regulations, they believe that they've always known cannabis is bad, therefore it always will be bad. It's called confirmation of bias in English, and it means what you've known before, you carry on thinking. And unless somebody actually takes you through the process and explains about your endocannabinoid system, which we haven't mentioned, one of the major reasons why cannabis works in so many different conditions with so much benefit, then you don't know. You carry on thinking cannabis is bad, but cannabis is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It is such a positive thing for changing the world that we need to change right here, right now, because we don't have long. We have maybe another decade, and the North Americans are leading the Europeans at change, and we need to accelerate these things.
So we've seen the system. I totally agree with Tim, and I'm trying to bring it back to MedCannID and how they say, it's fundamental to drive it, for the future. And I believe we are able to perform this function for the patients, because the medical cannabis community needs to be respected for what it is, acknowledged for what it is, and then understood by all the stakeholders for what it is. It's a provision to the patient, and we're only talking about law enforcement here. But as as the webinar went ahead, you can see like there's so many untied loose ends here. What happened to insurance companies? Nobody informed. HR, nobody informed. Customs, transport police, the DVLA, all these things is not just law enforcement. So maybe for MedCannID for the future, we are looking for a pan-European system, roll out in Europe, where a patient can travel from one country to the other, respecting obviously the regulations, but if medical cannabis, and according to the European law, any medication prescribed in one state to a citizen from an EU doctor should be allowed in another state. Maybe MedCannID can also bridge that gap at customs and beyond, So it is very important for the future of cannabis as such that medical cannabis patients are essentially acknowledged and given the security they require to just have a quality of life that is similar to everyone else. Fear of arrest should not be something that legal cannabis patients have to deal with every day.
Fantastic. So there is so much we can discuss. So I would love to invite you all for a round 2 conversation, or Stelios for a round 3 conversation. And Marios for sure would love to discuss MedCannID, how we can help bring the product to Poland. We have many plans here at CCF, not only with Stelios, with others, to really grow the medical cannabis ecosystem here. And as you say, so many important things which need to be done and facilitated. So I would like once again to thank Marios, Tim, Stelios for your time and for the very interesting conversation. I'd like to thank you all, the audience, for listening. And we have fantastic webinars coming up on the next few Thursdays. So we have the president of the Dementia Association with a top cannabis psychiatrist. We have the biggest experts, one of the biggest doctors on Parkinson's. And we have our health and wellness event on the 4th and 5th of December, CCF Lifestyle. So please, everybody, check everything out on www.cecf.eu. And for now, thank you all for listening and have a great evening. And thank you once again to our esteemed guests.
Thank you very much. Thanks.